It's been a fierce debate for as long as I could remember. Should the minimum wage go up to $15 an hour or more?
That's right. CCN Money and Market segment star Derek Georgino shares his thoughts on the impact with this issue. Derek?
Mary and Tim, the fight for 15 and other calls for increases in the minimum wage make news every now and then. Those in support of increases to the minimum wage champion its impact on livable wages and, quote, boosting disenfranchised minorities. However, do artificial wage hikes actually accomplish these intentions? And why are the movement's primary bankrollers actually financing this fight? Let's dig into this a little bit. Renowned economist Milton Friedman once referred to minimum wage hikes as the most anti-black laws in the land. Why? Well, as Friedman and other economists point out, minimum wage hikes can only benefit those lucky enough to keep their job. So when you decide to artificially raise low-skill wages, people whose skills are not sufficient to justify that kind of wage will become unemployed. Allow me to paint you the same picture Friedman once painted. Imagine a man who has a skill that justifies a wage of $10 per hour, but you cannot employ him. It is illegal because if you employ him, you must pay him $15 per hour. So what do? To employ him at $15 per hour is to engage in charity. And while charity is certainly righteous, most small business owners are not in the business of charity. They can't afford to be. This fact has even led to a $15 minimum wage being vetoed by one of the nation's most progressive mayors. Catherine Pugh, Democrat mayor of Baltimore, recently vetoed city legislation proposing an increase of Baltimore's minimum wage from $8.75 to $15 an hour. Pugh vetoed the bill, saying such legislation would have put Baltimore at a competitive disadvantage with neighboring cities and suburban counties. Now, minorities compose 69% of Baltimore's population. So when minimum wage hikes put Baltimore at a competitive disadvantage, they also disproportionately put minorities in Baltimore at a competitive disadvantage. Now, suppose a business doesn't hire less because of these artificial wage hikes. Great. Then what? Well, the cost gets passed on to you, the consumer. We have a serious disconnect here when it comes to many Americans advocating for wage hikes. People are forgetting that while they are producers during the day, the second they clock out, they become consumers. And these consumers hurt when costs are passed right back to them. The deeper the cost of doing business, the shallower the pocket. I want to take another look at another notion in this debate as well. The notion that minimum wages ought to be livable wages. I think we should question this. Why should somebody be expected to live off a minimum wage? What about young people between the ages of 16 and 24, many of which still live at home? The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that this group of young people comprises almost half of people who make the minimum wage. A significant amount of minimum wage earners are really young, live at home, and thus, one, don't need to live off the minimum wage since they live with mom and dad, and two, are trying to get some working experience that can just catapult them into something which is more lucrative. For many of these kids, jobs like this are mere stepping stones to a higher end. We cannot price some of these young people out of their first jobs because government decides that they should be, quote, living on their current wage. For many in the rising generation, a minimum wage job is a means to an end, not an end in and of itself to rely on. Also, the Fight 15 didn't even originate from individuals making the minimum wage. This fight has largely been pushed and bankrolled by labor unions. Why? Well, in some union contracts, minimum wage increases trigger salary increases for labor union members and leaders. But this isn't the only reason for union support. Since 2012, the Service Employees International Union, or SEIU, has spent more than $70 million on its campaign to have the minimum wage raised to $15 per hour. This figure stems from the union's own 2015 financial disclosures. Now, why are these gargantuan labor unions fighting so hard for this cause? Perhaps one can point to declining union membership. As a 2016 report from The Guardian points out, union membership has fallen from 20.1% to 11.1% in the last 32 years. Do some large unions seem to care more about increasing membership than they do about the well-being of low-wage earners? It sure looks that way, considering large Los Angeles unions have recently exempted themselves from the very $15 minimum wage they fought for. The Guardian reported that the movement for exemptions was started by Rusty Hicks, an executive of the AFL-CIO, the largest federation of labor unions in the United States. Union leaders claim that the exemption will allow them more freedom to negotiate better employment contracts that include low wages but excellent fringe benefits like high-quality health care. Makes sense. In other words, the unions have admitted that higher minimum wages put them at a competitive disadvantage when negotiating. So the largest federation of labor unions in America is exempt from the law that they spent millions of dollars lobbying for. Why? This is because the position of big labor is dishonest. They support minimum wage hikes for the purpose of increasing union membership, but they don't support it for the wage hike itself since they are exempting themselves from it. They don't support the fight for 15, they support the fight for union dues. That's it for now on CCN's Money and Markets. Have a great day and have a questioning mind. We'll see you next time on Money and Markets.
Wow, incredibly informative. Thank you so much, Derek. That's it for this show. A special thanks to Eric Lakin, Derek Georgino for joining us on set today. We also want to thank
our amazing crew.
Yes.
CCN Sunrise crew. And we also want to thank our sponsors who make the show possible. We want to thank Foothill Transit, EH Financial, East San Gabriel Valley ROP, Color Dots, and the Smile Agency for making the show possible. We also have Ingot Global.
And please don't forget to visit us on crowncitynews.com, as well as the Crown City News YouTube page, our CCN and our CCN Sunrise Twitter and Facebook, and KBMD Saturdays at 6 a.m., Sundays at 5.
See you next time.